Hello and welcome to Your Property Empire. I'm Chris Gray. On tonight's show, what can you do if you can't afford to live in your ideal suburb of choice? With capital growth slowing in many parts of Australia, is our next issue a bidding war on rental rates? And what does the spring property market have in store for us? Well, joining me tonight to comment on our stories is Derek Taylor, Sales Manager at realestate.com.au. Welcome to the show, Derek.
Evening, Chris.
Good to see you.
Delighted to be here.
Now, as always, a good topic on real estate because you get so many readers on there. What's the latest thing that people are reading these days?
Yes, our hot topic this week is how has your suburbs demographics changed? And this has been one of our most popular topics we've had in a while, and a bit over 400,000 views. And it has a look at the census data between 2011 and 2016 in terms of how has the demographics, the median house price, how has population changed in suburbs across the country. And if I have a look in my suburb of Terrigal, I've lived there now for a bit over 15 years, and it allows me to really immerse myself in terms of some great data of how that suburb has changed. So I've been living there a while, so it's good to see the change. But importantly, for somebody who's looking to move to a new suburb, you can simply go onto our dashboard on realestate.com.au in terms of our news section, and you can have a look at and really immerse yourself in this data in terms of how it might impact that particular suburb in terms of pricing, whether it be rentals or properties for sale.
Yep, and so it kind of goes through median house price, dwellings, households, tenure, pretty much all the information you need to know. And if our viewers are keen to check out how their suburb has changed, where should they be heading?
Yeah, just go to realestate.com.au to our news section. We've got a fantastic interactive dashboard there. Just simply type in the suburb that you're looking for or suburbs you're looking for, and all the information which we've just seen up on the screen will appear, and you'll be able to have a look at your particular suburb.
Wonderful, some good free information there. Now, I saw in the media last week that realestate.com.au ran a campaign on whether or not Australians know their neighbours. So did the research show that we're a friendly bunch of people?
Yeah, this has been a really fun campaign, and I have to say from the outset, I don't necessarily agree with the data, but it is suggesting that we might not be as friendly to our neighbours as what we might think. And the survey is suggesting that 1/3 of Australians actually don't want to get to know their neighbour, with about 15% saying they actively try to avoid their neighbour at any chance they get. So, you know, I think we live in one of the friendliest countries on this planet, and I live in a great neighbourhood of Terrigal where we all like to talk to each other, we get to know each other, it's quite safe and secure. We'll help each other in terms of, you know, taking the mail out of the letterbox when they're on holidays. And I think that's what's great about being Australians. But there's definitely some interesting data there that suggests that we might not be as friendly with our neighbours as what we thought.
Yeah, look, it was certainly one of the reasons I came to Australia. Coming from the UK, it was cold and wet, and there's the classic thing of the Poms always whinging all the time.
Yes.
Whereas I always found coming to Australia, you could walk up to anyone in the pub and just say hello, and everyone was pretty friendly. But so if they're saying we're not too friendly there, were there some other interesting insights to come out of the research?
Yeah, well, look, 11% of people said that they actually use their neighbour's garbage bin without asking. Now, I've got no problem with that. If ever I've got some room, I'm quite happy to share my garbage bin with my neighbour. So 10% said they actually spy on their neighbour. So I thought that was quite an interesting one, that they don't want to actually get to know their neighbour. But we've got some would-be 007s out there that are actually happy to do a bit of spying on their neighbour. 20% of people said they've had neighbour disputes, with 10% calling the police. And I can understand that from time to time, whether it be a boundary problem over a fence or perhaps a little bit of noise late at night. But one of the most surprising ones was 3% said they've seen their neighbours in the nude. So I might just leave it at that one.
So you certainly do get some information from those customers of yours. Now, it's obviously hard to find out what your neighbours are going to be like before you move in, but I guess what role does a neighbourhood play in influencing where people actually kind of look for property?
Yeah, I think neighbourhoods play an enormous role in influencing where people live. And generally when people search on realestate.com.au, they've got a location in mind. And this is generally influenced through our lifestyle, through families, through friends, through affordability. And interesting enough, 42% of people, when they're searching, actually search within about 15 kilometres of their desired location.
Right, okay. And obviously not everyone can afford to live in the suburb they want. So I guess what are some of the options around that? Yeah,
look, I think it's just about adjusting your search. And look, I'd love to be able to live, or have an apartment in Bondi or in Manly. But in terms of affordability, it's quite a long way out of my reach. So I've got to adjust my search. Now, in terms of realestate.com.au, we've got a fantastic tool called Neighbourhoods. And Neighbourhoods provides you with a whole heap of insights into various suburbs in terms of their demographics, their lifestyles, medium house price, population, and a whole heap of other information which might just help you in terms of giving you some other ideas of where you might actually want to be located, because it's about adjusting whether you actually got a particular location in mind, or maybe be close on the fringe, or even close proximity. We've also got a great tool called Discover, which will allow people to type in their budgetary information, their lifestyle information, and it will give you recommendations on similar neighbourhoods that actually suit your actual requirements.
And I guess for a lot of people that are coming in from interstate or overseas, having all this information to hand is really essential, because otherwise they've just got no idea when they're moving the other side of the world exactly what they're getting into.
Oh, exactly right. You know, I think some of the more popular suburbs, you've got a bit of an idea in terms of where you might want to go. But in terms of the actual demographics or the lifestyle demographics of a particular suburb, you don't really know. And you generally want to live in a neighbourhood that has similar values and similar likes to yourself or your family or your friends. And this is a great tool to be able to give you some really good insights into that.
Now, obviously the property market is running around in cycles, and there's different things happening all the time. I gather now with some of the rentals, people are actually kind of having Dutch auctions and starting to bid against each other, maybe even offering bigger deposits or a couple of months rent up front.
Yeah, and look, I think it depends on where you are, and without doubt it's very competitive in Sydney and Melbourne, in particular for houses. But if you're looking for an apartment, or in Brisbane, I think there's still pretty good supply. So it might not be as necessary, but without doubt there are, in some of the more competitive areas, people are offering higher rents, or in sometimes weeks in advance, to secure their dream rental. And my tip would be that for anyone looking out there to rent, and they're maybe having a few challenges, is that as soon as they see a property, get that application in as soon as possible, because it's incredibly competitive and you want to get ahead of the game. Second thing is fill out a OneForm application, and OneForm is an online tenancy application that you can actually complete, and complete all the fields prior to any inspections that you might go to. And that way, if you go to an inspection, you fall in love with the property that you want to rent, you can actually basically send off your OneForm application straight away to get ahead of the game. It's all about making it as easy as possible for the property manager. And I think, you know, introduce yourself to the property manager, make yourself known to them, make sure you've got your deposit handy, you've got your bond ready, and that you prepare your referees in terms of that they might just get a call from a property manager for that particular property. And finally, look, if all else fails and it does become a little bit of a struggle, depending on the situation, maybe give shared accommodation a bit of thought, and check out flatmates.com.au.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when REA bought OneForm, and I think they announced it on the show. And certainly that makes life so much easier if you don't have to fill out 10 application forms and you can just do it once. So technology definitely helping in some areas there. Anyway, welcome back to Your Property Empire. Well, joining me on the show tonight is Derek Taylor, Sales Manager at realestate.com.au. Welcome back there, Derek. Now, obviously, we're talking to Charles, and he was saying that quite often with spring, it's not so much seasonal these days. Down at REA, how do you think the market's going to perform this year?
Yeah, in terms of realestate.com.au, demand is still really strong on the site. But without doubt, I think the market at the moment is a little bit more subdued than perhaps same time last year. And I think that's a positive thing, because you know, if you think about it, there would have been upgraders or people looking to come in the market to upgrade, and might have been a little bit nervous over time due to that. If you put your property on the market to sell, you want to buy another property, and because the stock was a little bit tight, it might have just made them a little bit nervous to do that. So I think with the market sort of a little bit more subdued now, and that's due to an increase in the lending rates, I think you'll see more of those upgraders come into the market this spring, which we're already starting to see a little bit more volume. We've got really good buyer demand in terms of the site, or site demand. I think it's going to be win-win for everybody in spring.
Now, obviously, some people love to sell their property when there's stacks of properties on the market, and other people prefer the quiet time and go contrarian. What are maybe some of your tips that you give to people that are looking to sell their property in spring?
Yeah, I think two key tips. The first one is, and it's really important, find the right agent. And the second one is around preparing your house for sale. If we look at in terms of finding the right agent, I think, you know, I can't stress the importance of doing your own research and spending a lot of time in this particular area, because that can make the difference between a very successful outcome. One of the ways is go to realestate.com.au's agent profiles, and you can have a look at all the agents within your local marketplace, and it's important to get somebody local. And basically agent profiles will give you their career resume, their industry resume, so that way it can help you in terms of your decision-making process of the agent that you'll ultimately select. Once you've narrowed it down to a few, probably suggest try before you buy. Go and have a look at a couple of open for inspections from those agents, see how they interact with buyers, with vendors, and even the campaigns that they run. Get some reviews, whether it be through social media or even ask friends and families in terms of their previous experiences. And once you again narrow it down to a few, ask them some questions in terms of your particular property. What's the best method of sale? When's the best time to sell? And what's their marketing strategy? What's their strategy to get the most amount of eyeballs on that particular property to get the best outcome? Because not all campaigns are the same.
Yeah, I think the tip about going to the open inspections and checking out the agent, you can see exactly how they're treating the buyers. And certainly for the buyers, what about some tips for them?
Yeah, in terms of buyers, I think it's about making sure that you've got your finance already approved or pre-approved at the very beginning, in particular for auctions. But also if you're starting your property journey and you're going out and having a look at it open for inspections, if you're all organised with your finance and you fall in love, that just happens to work out that very first property you inspect you fall in love with, you're basically ready to make an offer then and there. And rather than having to go off, get your finance in order, that can sometimes take some time. And you just don't want to be disappointed by having to come back and find that property might have gone to somebody else. So get your finances in order, set a budget. I think with lending rates starting to increase, I think it's really important that you have a budget to work within. Buying a property can be quite an emotional time, and it's a fantastic experience, but just got to work within that particular budget. Make sure you read the contract. Spend some quality time in understanding the contract. Perhaps get some advice from a quality solicitor or a conveyancer. But it's really important you understand the contract, because some advice could actually help you out down the track. Get a pest and building inspection, and maybe even use some of those open for inspection visits to get a bit of an understanding of the property. Again, it's quite an emotive time, but maybe have a look, you know, is there any mould in the house? Is there anything that might give you some concerns on structural issues with the property? And probably finally, that if it starts to get a little bit too frustrating, because it can be a stressful period, maybe give some thought to engaging a buyer's agent, because they're experts in terms of the negotiation phase as well as perhaps searching for the right property for you.
Yep, sure. Now, you touched on lending rates there, and obviously affordability is a pretty hot topic at the moment. I gather that CEDA was reporting last week that the housing affordability crisis would last potentially 40 years, and we went to a recent CoreLogic lunch, and they were saying that property for under 400 grand has pretty much dried up. So do you think buying property is now pretty much unachievable for many people?
Yeah, I think it really depends on where you are and the situation. So if you're already in the property market, you probably built up a little bit of equity, so it's probably a little bit easier. But if you're coming, you know, first time into the property market, it can be very tough. In particular in Sydney, where I think property of all types becoming more and more unaffordable. In terms of Melbourne, houses definitely becoming unaffordable, but there's still some good supply in terms of apartments, so probably apartments is a little bit easier. But everywhere else in Australia, definitely becoming more expensive.
Wonderful. And then just very quickly before we leave, what are some of the hot trending markets that people should look out for?
Yeah, definitely consider the Central Coast and Wollongong. They've got close proximity to the Sydney CBD, so they're good commuter markets, but they're also idyllic locations, beautiful locations, and some great opportunities in those areas. Tasmania, we've got really strong buyer demand or site demand in terms of Tasmania. Sydney and Perth, premium properties, sorry, Sydney and Melbourne premium property will always continue to do well. And Perth, although it's not one of our high performing markets, I think any of the key suburbs, we're starting to see some really good price growth.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us, Derek, and thanks for all those tips and ideas.
Thank you.